There we go. Now we're up and running. Dealing with some internet issues. Now I'm winded from running up the stairs to redo the router. Anyway, it's betPARX presents Stick to Hockey Live. Anthony DiMarco going to join us in a second. Well, we just got some interesting stuff to talk about regarding Jake Voracek, some things he had to say on a podcast about his time here in Philadelphia. Didn't predict that was coming today. But let me tell you about betPARX because it is live. I was just on it, checking it out, looking at some of the options for tonight. $20 free sports bet if you are on the app now or just signing up. So download the betPARX app, check it out. Easy to use. I got it right here. I'm going to show you. There it is. It's opening up again. It's going to verify my location. It is now live. It is great. It is upgraded from the other app. Easier to use, more ways to win, faster payouts. You're going to love it. Absolutely love it. And right now, like I said, all betPARX users, God, I'm freaking winded from running up the stairs. Granted, it's a flight and a half at my house, but still. Either your choice of a $20 casino bonus or a $20 free sports bet. So make sure you download the betPARX app now. You do need to be over 21 present in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Again, check it out. See, now I'm logged in. Damn it. As I just fumble my phone. See, now it's logged in. I'm not logged in, but there's all different things you can do. Sportsbook and game betting. Same game parlays, exact score, first to score, props, money lines, it's all there. Check it out. betPARX. They present this wonderful podcast, and we present you with the wonderful coming from the Great White North. You read his work on fourthperiod.com. It is Anthony DiMarco joining us on Stick to Hockey Live. And let's put and when you're on, we got to go like this. We go, boom.
How's it going, man?
What's going on, man?
Not bad. I hope my new setup is working all right. Do you hear me loud and clear?
Yeah. Are you standing?
It's I had to do a makeshift studio because I'm in the process of moving. I'm on the mend from COVID, so I have a whole bunch of things going on right now.
Sheesh.
But no, yeah, I just have my laptop sitting on a very miniature desk, something that's probably meant for elementary school kids. But as long as you can hear me, I'm good to go.
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear, and the people can hear you. That's good. I just saw this come over. Andy and Rono tweeted out, and they said it's not an April Fool's thing, so it is real. So I screenshotted the interview and answers from Jake Voracek, and I would have hit you in this cold. I don't know if you saw this. Did you see this?
No, I haven't seen it yet.
So Jake Voracek was on hokej.cz. I guess it's a podcast or something from the Czech Republic.
Okay.
And the first thing was asked of him. It says Columbus longtime assistant Brad Larson took over in Columbus last June after John Tortorella's six-year tenure. What does it emphasize? And he said Brad Larson is really open, which is probably the best you can have with a coach. Compared to recent years in Philadelphia, this is a pleasant change. That's not it, though. There's more, and it's even meatier. So he was also asked about his role playing first power play in Columbus, and he said, I also played first power play in Philadelphia. We probably had the same unit there all the time. It was more about that. If you just don't agree with the coach, it's hard. I didn't go into the conflict at all, but I think I could. The Flyers decided to take a different path, and I didn't want to interfere there. I left. Now G left, and they are one of the worst teams in the NHL. First of all, they have to look at what mistakes they made, but I don't think they imagined the year they are having. Then he talked about Giroux's departure as well and said that, he and Giroux talked often before the trade deadline. He said leaving after 15 years was hard for him because he always thought he would play his whole career in Philadelphia. And over the last few years, the chemistry outside the locker room has unfortunately been so strange, but it has not been within our competence. He said, we can say that under Ron Hextall, we rebuilt the team, even though it didn't look like it because we made the playoffs or we were so close to the playoffs. And before COVID started, he said, I thought we played really good hockey. Maybe we could go far then, but that's just the way it is. And then this is the last thing. He was asked about the circumstances of his trade and talked about, the relationship that he had with Chuck Fletcher and that it was a good relationship. And he said there was nothing that could be done with the coach. His ego was so big that unfortunately there was not much to deal with. Chuck and I talked about it. I had a great relationship with him. After the season, we sat down and told each other that it would probably be best for both parties to move on. I'm glad it turned out the way it did because I'm really happy. But he said there was a lot going on here, and the huge ego of the coach, and that's not referring to Mike Yeo, that's referring to Alain Vigneault. You surprised to hear any of this?
Well, not really. Maybe a bit surprised to hear how open he's talking about it. But I mean, we all knew that Jake Voracek and Alain Vigneault did not see eye to eye, which, I mean, I think it started all the way back in the bubble in the 2020 playoffs. Obviously, last season, the 2021 shortened season, things kind of imploded everywhere around this team, and it continued to spiral this year. I mean, I can see why Voracek's a bit upset and now maybe feels the need to kind of be taking liberties at the Flyers, because when he was moved, when Ghost was moved, they were kind of viewed as like the problem childs, right?
Yeah.
They were ridding the locker room of like the troublesome guys. And then those two guys leave and everything stays the same. Alain Vigneault gets canned less than 3 months into the season rather. So, I mean, I don't see why. That's not what I meant to say. I don't think that Voracek is wrong with these comments per se. I just don't think maybe it's kind of, I don't know if classy is the right word, but I don't see why he feels the need to take these shots at the Flyers on his way out, or not even on his way out. He's been gone for 8 months or so.
Yeah.
But I guess he kind of feels a bit vindicated that everything's transpired the way it has the season after he got dealt in the offseason.
Yeah. Well, the thing is like, Jake, he doesn't give a shit.
That's it. That's it.
He's going to say how he feels. I guess he was just asked about it and decided that at this point, screw the high road. I took the high road when asked about it when I was first dealt. And then he sees how it plays out in Columbus, where, as he says, he's very happy there. And even though the team's not great, they're better than the Flyers are. But, you look at it and sometimes you just go, you know what? I don't care. Screw it. I didn't have a good experience under him. And, it's interesting because the two players you mentioned Voracek and you mentioned Gostisbehere, both who aren't here, both were guys that tended to play the game kind of according to their own plan with a lack of structure.
Yeah. And they kind of beat to their own drum, right?
Yeah.
And I think Gostisbehere in particular.
Both are outspoken.
Both are outspoken. And I think Gostisbehere, him particularly, was a kind of guy who really made his name in the NHL by just doing whatever he wanted on the fly, being like that that freelance guy, high flying, freewheeling, all that. And then when it didn't work, it just like amplified all of his glaring weaknesses. Voracek, on the other hand, it's crazy. I said that from, let's say, the middle of 1920 on until he left, I felt that he was their best forward. Mm-hmm. And I thought that reigned true for the 2020 bubble playoffs as well. And that was a playoffs where Couture didn't have a good year. Giroux didn't have a good showing in the playoffs. JVR was in and out of the press box. I thought Voracek and Hayes were the only two top Flyers, the forwards at least, who really showed up in those playoffs. You could even throw Konechny into that mix. That's when his troubles really started.
In the bubble.
Pardon me?
Didn't score in the bubble.
Exactly. And he was coming off of that fantastic year in 1920. So to hear that Voracek was having so many of these problems with Alain Vigneault, while simultaneously being a good player, putting up a good amount of production, I can't remember off the top of my head what he registered last year with the Flyers, but he seemed to be a productive player through and through right to the end. And one thing I think that the Flyers have desperately missed this season that Voracek brought was his transition game. Once he got into the offensive zone, sometimes his decision-making was questionable. But I thought that he was oftentimes the only guy who could be counted upon to make clean zone entries shift after shift. So obviously there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, maybe even more so than we once thought, between the coach and Jake Voracek. But it's just crazy to think that there was so much animosity going on while he was still being a productive player on the ice.
Yeah, last year in the 53 games that he played in the 56-game season, he had 9 goals, 34 assists, 43 points in that time. And you remember, there were points in the season where, the Flyers would get down in the game and basically they would play 2 lines in the third period. And he was on those 2 lines, he and Giroux and Couturier, because the coach, the old veteran coaches that have a lot of cachet like Alain Vigneault, they believe in their system so rigidly that, there's no, kind of doing your own thing. That's how you end up in the doghouse. Now, Jake never seemed to end up in the doghouse where it affected his minutes. But like young players, you kind of he wanted to beat them into submission and to playing the game under his vision. And Ghost is a guy that, like I know all the people want to post his numbers this year, and he's got good numbers, offensive numbers. But the fact remains is the guy is a net negative player. He's playing. I was talking to a former NHL guy the other day. I won't even say the position, goalie. And he said, that's a guy that, first of all, as a goalie, I know when he's on the ice because I'm in trouble, because that's how poor he is defensively. And he goes, and I don't care what he's doing in Arizona. There's no pressure. The team stinks. All of the elements of, backup goaltenders that you get, like his numbers are good offensively, but overall the dude is a net negative player. And, people are like still freaking out that they had to give away an asset for somebody to take him. They were offering him for nothing and nobody wanted him. And I had some guy on Twitter the other day tell me that, because I cited the guys never won a board battle. And the guy goes, board battles don't matter. I almost I wanted to grab like a hammer and hit myself in the head and go, if board battles don't matter in hockey, then I don't know what I've been thinking my entire life, because that is a huge element of the game.
No, yeah, Goss's beer, like, to be honest, I was never a huge fan of Ghost because he was so one-dimensional. But when you're a one-trick pony, but that one trick, you're pulling it off every game or twice a game.
And it outweighs the other part.
Exactly. So as long as that one trick is working, then, you do you and you get it done. But I found that with Ghost, that when it wasn't working, everything else became glaring. And I've always been of the mindset that, like, as a top pairing defenseman, which he was at a certain point, let's say 17, 18, or even at times a top 4 defenseman, you have to be able to be put out there for the penalty kill. And even at the top of his game, he was never able to be trusted on the penalty kill. Yeah. And even his underlying numbers, his analytics in Arizona are not very good this year. I think they're even inferior to Rasmus Ristolainen, who absolutely gets crucified up here in Philly. So look, I mean, Ghost certainly has a role in this league, but certainly not for $4.5 million. Certainly not for another year after this season. Certainly not for a team that, is more pressured than the Arizona Coyotes. So look, I understand why people fell in love with Ghost. I understand why people are still upset that they had to attach a second and a 7th round pick to get rid of his contract. But when you look around the NHL, it wasn't like a bunch of teams were banging down the door for his services.
Yeah, they could have got him for nothing when he was waived, and they could have got him in the offseason for nothing, just in a trade. And I mean, it could have been that simple, but you had to attach assets to get rid of him. And that's telling. And like people say, well, general managers don't make mistakes, or they don't know how to deploy him. Come on, stop. I mean, the guy was a dramatic player and exciting when he was on heaters. But the fact remains is overall his game is net negative. If you want to put him on a third pairing and play him 9 to 12 minutes a night and a power play specialist, I'm fine with that. But I can't pay him $4.5 million to do that.
Well, that was the huge argument this year when people would be saying like, oh my God, I wish we had kept Ghost over Keith Yandle. Well,
Yandle's on a veteran minimum.
Yeah, is Ghost making less than $1 million a year? Like, even if Ghost was making $1.5 million a year, 1.75 a year, Ghost every day of the week, he's a much better player than Keith Yandle. Now, at the same time, that's not saying much about Keith Yandle's level of play, but you also have to take the salary into account. Ghost is making more than, isn't he $100,000 less than Travis Sanheim this year? Think about the role that Travis Sanheim is playing and what Ghost brings out in the desert. You can't detach the salaries from the players. And I think that's what some people at times have trouble doing.
Yeah, I totally agree. We wasted enough time on Ghost already, but it leads us right to Yandle. And it looks like Keith Yandle at practice today, Friday, was on the 4th pair. As we know, there's only 3 pairs in hockey. And Mike Yeo did not commit that he is not going to be in the lineup tomorrow, but I would basically say it's very likely that his Ironman streak ends, I think, at 983 tomorrow. because Ronnie Adder will be in the lineup and Keith Yandel will not.
I mean, I don't want to say it's been a long time coming, but it's probably been
a long time coming.
Yeah, and I think that for a while here, you could justify, well, if it's Yandel or it's Sealer or if it's Connaughton, is the difference that big to justify ending this guy's streak? I was leaning more on the side, just play the guy. But now that, they're out of contention officially, now it's time to see what you've got with some of these kids. Ronnie Adder comes up. He's a right shot defenseman. I think that this is an opportunity here for them to get a good look at these kids. And you have nothing to lose at this point, and you kind of have to sit Yandel. And it sucks. I get it. I know that he's very well liked in the room. Obviously, a very dear friend of Kevin Hayes, who in some ways is kind of like an unofficial, I wouldn't say the unofficial captain right now, but one of the leaders on this team for sure. And I'm sure it's not going to go over swimmingly with some of the guys in there. But I do think that, like we just said, it is a long time coming for Yandel to finally sit.
Yeah, I mean, he's not feeling well, and maybe that's the excuse. Maybe that's just a save the face kind of thing as well. But it looks like he will be out. The D pairs at practice today were Provorov in York, Sanheim and Ristolainen, as per usual, and Sealer and Adder. Yandel and Connaughton were basically the fourth pair. Hart was back at practice. What'd you think of Noah Cates? Because he's going to be on that top line with Joel Farabee in the middle, Noah Cates and Cam Atkinson. I mean, this just seems – I look at, like, the lines today. Farabee in the middle. It's, like, so bizarre. I feel like we're on Neptune or something. What'd you think of Noah Cates in his first game against Minnesota?
Yeah, I thought he was all right. Nothing.
He made some good plays.
Yeah, nothing to jump off the page there, but I think he made some good plays. I mean, it's obviously you're going to need to see more than one game against Minnesota, and obviously Minnesota as a whole was just clearly the much better team than the Flyers in that game. Like, there's a reason why Minnesota is where they are and where the Flyers are where they are.
Fuck, they look good, man, Minnesota.
They do look very good. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they could upset a team like Colorado if they get past St. Louis or Nashville in the first round there. But especially with Fleury out there now, giving them kind of a safety net behind Cam Talbot. You have a superstar in Kaprizov. They have some heavy players like Greenway and whatnot. No, that's a very good team, a veteran blue line that's been together for a long time. Like that group on the back end they have there with like Dumba and Spurgeon and Brodin. Yeah. Like they've been around and working as a cohesive unit for quite some time now. And that means a lot in the world of chemistry. I think we're even kind of seeing that in Boston. Like now they've obviously added Lindholm, but you've had Grzelcyk and Carlo and McAvoy all been working together for several years now. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that in terms of Noah Cates, I thought he was good. It's just tough to kind of really like shine in a game where you're playing on a team that is so vastly outmatched by the opposition.
Yeah. And the other thing, Minnesota, like I feel like they're a bit of a throwback team. Like Billy Guerin to me is building a team that's not going to be an absolute wagon in the regular season. They're not going to go out and get 115 standings points. But when you get into a playoff series, like they go out and they get Delarier, who is just a pain in the rear end to play against, right? And gives them a lot of toughness. I feel like he's building a playoff team. He's not building a regular season team. And I totally agree with you. It's the one thing I would worry about if I was a Colorado Avalanche fan is, does my team have enough ass to be able to get through a 7-game series against a team like that?
And that's the problem that we saw Colorado run into last year against the Vegas Golden Knights. And I thought that they were going to address that this year. Now, to be fair, they did with the addition of Josh Manson on defense. But in terms of forward acquisitions, they're kind of just running it back like they had last year. Like, obviously, they add Arturi Lehkonen from the Montreal Canadiens, but he's not exactly going to run someone through the boards. And that's not to say that you have to go get, Ryan Reeves or what have you. But I thought like a guy, like not to say that he was available or anything, but a guy from Montreal, like Josh Anderson, like that's a guy I could have really seen.
Big banger.
Exactly. Like put him on the second line with Burakovsky and Kadri or something and see what happens down in Colorado. But no, I'm not
too.
Yeah.
Anderson.
No.
Yeah.
Like when he gets trucking and he tucks it in and then he brings it right to the net, like he's a really good player, very underrated player. Now that he's been able to stay healthy for a few seasons, you're seeing what kind of player he is. So, I mean, Personally, to focus on Minnesota a bit, at this juncture, with my way too early playoff prediction, I think I see them coming out of the Central. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, and I think, despite the fact that Calgary's lost 2 in a row, I think Calgary's ticketed to go to the Cup final.
Yeah,
because
me
I think the
too.
goaltending's better. I mean, I look at Markstrom in the year he has been unreal.
Yeah.
They lose that game to the Kings in the shootout, and the Kings grabbed the 2 points. But let's talk about the Kings real quick, and then we're going to get to a Flyers rebuild thing, because I saw an article that Sam Carchidi wrote, and I just wanted to comment on it and get your thoughts on it. But the Kings are a team that didn't tear it down. They're a team that retooled, and the retool wasn't one off season. It takes a little bit of time, but it's not a tear it down to the studs and then draft and develop in this 5-year plan. But they're right back in it, and they look really good. And they're getting some goaltending from Cal Peterson. They got early goaltending from Quicks, unbelievably. You still have Kopitar on that team. You still have Doughty, even though he's dealt with some injuries. But that's a team, and that's kind of the team I look at, despite the fact that they won 2 cups in their prime, but only have a few players left. But that's a team I look at and go, that's how you retool.
Yeah, and their benefit was that they held on to several players from a core that had legitimate success.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of saw Boston do that in like 2015, 2016 too, when they moved on from guys like Milan Lucic. They moved on from, I believe Nathan Horton moved on to Columbus. He only played like 8 games or something for the Blue Jackets. They moved on from, there was a defenseman too, his name escapes me. But you remember they missed the playoffs in 2 straight years. They were able to, Seidenberg. They were able to kind of reload on the fly. They moved Boychuk off to New York, and they were able to draft guys like Pasternak. They were able to draft guys like McAvoy and Carlo, bring up a guy like Grzelcyk.
Yeah, they got Backus out of there.
Yeah, so like when you have a pre-existing core that enjoyed legitimate success, like LA did, like Boston did, I think it's easier to do that, because when you inject that newer blood into it and that pre-existing core is still there, that new blood is just like, okay, these guys know how to win. We're just coming in to kind of reinforce them, help them get back to it. They know how to get there. And that's kind of like what we're seeing with LA too. Now, obviously, guys like Richards are gone, Carter's gone, Toffoli's gone, Pearson's gone. All these guys are gone, but you still have Dustin Brown, you still have Anze Kopitar, and you still have Drew Doughty and Jonathan Quick. Yep. Those 4 guys were arguably the faces of those 2 cup teams in 2012 and 2014. So now that you're bringing guys like Byfield, the few young guys they have on the back end, they have Gabe Velarde up front, and all these other kind of veterans that they added along the way, like Phil Deno and Victor Arvidsson, you're starting to see this team kind of rekindle that magic they had from 7-8 years ago with those players that were there during that success as well.
Yeah. And I looked at Dano and I was like, is that redundant having a Kopitar and a Dano? But it's freed both players up in some ways to still have good offensive seasons, because the role isn't just to be a shutdown guy religiously. And look, Dano's not a dynamic offensive player, but he's a great 200-foot defender. And even he's had some really good offensive moments this year, because you have Kopitar that can serve in that role at times as well, who's won a Selke. So, I thought it was an interesting offseason out there, and they've recoiled well. But this notion of, Sam wrote this article on Philly Hockey Now, and he cited that the Flyers need to do basically a proper rebuild. They need to tear it down. And he mentioned some of the contracts that that they have. And I looked at it, and when he brought up the contracts and I was reading the piece, I was like, Sam, but you kind of shot your argument in the foot, because, if you're going to tear it down, as he suggests, how do you tear it down when you have a player like Kevin Hayes, who signed through 25-26 at $7.142 million? How do you tear it down when you have Cam Atkinson to 24-25 at 5.8? How do you tear it down when you have, other players? Sean Couturier's 8-year contract has yet to kick in. Ivan Provorov's contract's got 3 more years beyond this one. So you just don't you can't just trade players. It's not The Godfather, and either your signature is going to be on that page or your brains, because people aren't going to do that unless you're selling those pieces off for pennies on the dollar. And you're not going to get much in return because you're trading a huge cap hit to these teams. So tearing it down based on the way that their salary cap structure is right now is, to me, is not an option.
I don't think so. It is either. And the thing is, you didn't even mention Ryan Ellis, who arguably has the toughest
Great
contract.
point. Yeah, that's a great point.
I don't think tearing it down is an option anymore. And when we say tear it down, I assume he meant kind of like the Ottawa Senators, like what they did in 17-18. But I think that kind of model is becoming less and less common in the NHL. It's more like you move out some of the big pieces of like that were faces of your franchise, and then you rebuild kind of on the fly around the pre-existing pieces that you kept.
Like, so kind of like trading Gostisbehere, Voracek, and Giroux.
Kind of. You're on the right track there.
Yeah.
But we kind of, everyone likes to use the Rangers model, right? And that's kind of tough to kind of justify because the Rangers are very fortunate that they're such a desired location. Guys like Panarin fell into their lap, Trouba, Fox, of course. But then too, like when they, traded McDonough and they traded Rick Nash and all those guys, they still hung on to Zibanejad. They hung on to Kreider. Up until this last offseason, they held on to Buchnevich. So for me, I think the Flyers can't do a full tear it down to the studs like the Sanders did because of what they did last offseason. Before last offseason, I could say, okay, you have one kind of egregious long-term deal with Kevin Hayes. Aside from that, you can make these pieces work. But you bring in Cam Atkinson, you bring in Ryan Ellis, you extend Sean Couturier, that ship has sailed. Yeah. What I do think that you could explore here is something of like accepting like a year or two, taking a step back, and not like this year where you're actively trying to take a step forward and it blows up in your face for whatever reason, whether it be injuries, some guys not performing well, the coach not working out, what have you. I think that if you invest a year or two into saying like, we're going to invest a bit into the future, and whatever comes of it, then so be it. I think that's something the Flyers may look to explore, kind of like what the Bruins did in 15-16. Yeah, but in terms of a reboot, yeah, but something that they're actively trying to do. Like last offseason, the Flyers weren't trying to reboot. They were trying to get back into the playoffs. Mike Yost said it several times to me in an interview I did before the seasons. We have to make the playoffs. We have to make the playoffs. And obviously, that's not the case. They've missed the playoff 3 of the last 4 seasons. So for me, I think that maybe embracing something that could result in them missing the playoffs for another year or two for the betterment of the future. But in terms of completely tearing it down to the studs, kind of akin to the Ottawa Senators, you can after the players you brought in last summer.
Yeah, if you were going to not make the long-term commitment to Couturier, I mean, the Atkinson thing, I go, okay, they have one more year of term, but they have less cap allocation because Voracek was making more money, and he filled a need, and it was a player-for-player deal. So that one, I go, okay, I could. That to me is an egregious. The Ryan Ellis thing is, I still make the trade today because of what I gave up, but the problem is. What is he going to be next year? I mean, I got asked this the other day on Flyers Daily when I was taking Twitter questions. Like, I mean, I can't give you any kind of percentage on the chances that he plays 80% of the games next year. I have no clue. Nobody has any clue when it comes to Ryan Ellis.
It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre situation.
I mean, I haven't heard this, but I mean, could the guy end up retiring? I mean, the cap recapture would go not to the Flyers, but go to the Nashville Predators, who kind of dodged that bullet on a couple of occasions, including with Shea Weber right now.
Would that be the best case scenario for the Flyers, in your opinion?
I mean, probably. And look, unless I know that he's going to play 80% of the games for the next 2 or 3 years, but I have no clue on that. If he retired, then I get all the cap space. Yeah, I made a trade. I gave up Nolan Patrick and I gave up Phil Myers, who just cleared waivers, and Patrick barely plays, so I don't worry about it from that standpoint anymore. it was worth the risk. But if the guy retired, and look, I don't think he's going to, but I mean, that would just all of a sudden open up 5.8.
Yeah, well, he's owed what, like $30+ million on his contract. Why would he willingly walk away from all that money? And I just think that with Ryan Ellis,
if it's an injury, does he get some kind of insurance on or something on a lot of that?
Well, this is the thing, is that like if he's retiring because of an injury, he would just go on LTIR, kind of like what's happening with Shea Weber. But if
come in every year and fail your physical.
Exactly, or Chris Pronger or what have you. But if it's just retiring and walking away from the contract, kind of like what Vinny LeCavalier did when they traded him to the Los Angeles Kings in 2016, he would just leave all the money on the table and the remainder of the contract would be void. So I just don't see Ryan Ellis. He's what, 30 years old? I don't see the guy.
33, I think.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, he's not young. I mean, I'm looking right now. Ellis is, geez, why can't I find him on this freaking thing? I think he's 33 years of age already.
Well, either way, I think he has
31. Sorry.
31. So I think he has just 5 years left on his contract at 6.25, if I'm not mistaken.
6.25, yep.
Yeah, so
26-27.
Through 26-27. So that is, okay, my math isn't spectacular here, but that's over $31 million left owed to him, at least in terms of the AAV. I can't speak to the real dollars, but I mean, that's a lot of money that's left owed to this guy. And if he retires, it's not like he can go to another team. Obviously, there was, Anthony Sanfilippo, I believe on your show, was talking about, is he really committed to this team to come back and play for them?
Yeah, where's his head?
Well, that's it. You just haven't really heard of him.
Yeah.
Like, he played that game in Dallas back in mid-November, and since then, like, you just haven't heard of him at all. And he was a guy that I was thinking that in the event that Giroux would be traded, which he ultimately was, could be maybe the next captain of this team. Yeah. Obviously, that ship has sailed, but I mean, he was supposed to be a guy to really come in and right the ship for this squad, and him only playing 4 games really sent everything into a tailspin.
Yeah, he ain't walking away from that money. Would you walk away from that money?
Absolutely
I don't care how much you've made. 30 million's 30 million,
Exactly.
And there's nothing he can do in his post-hockey playing career that's going to supplement that kind of money and mitigate damage. No way.
That's it. So unless he's, forced into retirement via injury, I can't see him walking away from that. Maybe it gets to that point, but
yeah. And look, you can't trade him back to Nashville because maybe he didn't want to leave. Dave Poyle's not going to take him back. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, why would you?
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah, it'd be silly.
And we all wondered, right? Why did they give him up for spare parts? And now you're kind of seeing why.
Yeah, the fragility of his availability.
Yeah,
I mean, they ended up, extending Ekholm and yeah, obviously I have Yossi. I mean, that team's been a factory when it comes to D.
Yeah,
it's just been unreal what they've had down there. And last thing, the one thing that I look at, the common denominator. I don't know how much Chuck Fletcher can accomplish this offseason. And I don't know that this is the offseason to try and accomplish all of it, because I don't know that the UFA class is not what it's going to be the following year. The draft is okay. It's good, but it's not the 23 draft. So there's all those elements to it. And the 24 pick in the first round that they got in the Giroux deal, I think increases in value next offseason as opposed to this offseason because it's closer. But the one thing that teams that either have done a rebuild or a retool, they all have in common. The teams that where it hasn't worked, they share this one common denominator, and the teams where it has worked all share this common denominator, and it's goaltending. It's the one thing. Look at Buffalo. They've had some really good picks go through there. I think some of their picks, obviously Eichel didn't work out in the long run because of everything that went down, but I look at Deline, I look at some of the players that they've gotten there, and I go, okay, they've gotten some good players, but they've had no goaltending. I look at New Jersey, same thing. You got Hughes. You got Heischer's a good player, not a star, but you have some really good pieces there, but they haven't had the goaltending. Just look at the teams that try to rebuild or retool, and the ones that fail at it don't have goaltending. The ones that succeed all have goaltending.
Yeah, for sure. We were just talking about LA and Boston earlier. They all had goaltending. Rangers, they went from Lundqvist to Shesterkin. They've just been so.
Oh shit! They go from Richter to
Yeah.
Lundqvist to Shesterkin. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Exactly. And like, even this isn't like a retooling situation, but look at the Calgary Flames.
Yeah.
They had a revolving door of just mediocre goaltending since Kiprusoff. Remember, they had like Jonas Hiller to Brian Elliott to Mike Smith to Cam Talbot. And then they finally invest the money into Jacob Markstrom. And what do you know? They're a cup contender.
Yep.
But no, yeah, I think that's the one position that the Flyers are completely set at for the foreseeable future. Obviously, Carter Hart, I think, has been fine this season. I think they have some good guys in the system. I think mostly people that I've spoken to who track the Phantoms closely say that Sandstrom's been pretty good. Urson has battled injuries, so it's kind of tough to get a read on him.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Ustimenko's been banged up a bit at times as well.
Exactly, which is one of the reasons why they didn't ultimately pull the trigger on a Martin Jones trade at the deadline.
Yeah.
Fedotov, I believe he's coming over next year, but he's had a good year over in Russia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's been outstanding in the KHL playoffs after the Olympics as well. The thing is with Fedotov, though, look, the thing we don't know. I was talking to Chuck Fletcher about this. I don't even think it was, on the podcast, but I think we were just talking about it. They just don't know if they can bring guys over from Russia or Belarus. He's a Belarusian, or no, Kolosov's a Belarusian, but they don't know if they're going to get a work visa to be able to come over and play.
Yeah, so like all that stuff aside, like I think that they're pretty set with goaltending for the foreseeable future.
I agree.
And I still think that they have some good pieces up front. They have some good pieces on the back end. I really think that one star forward up front could change the fortunes for this team. But it can't pardon me?
Slots it better.
It just slots everyone better. And it can't just be giving $9 million to Johnny Gaudreau. It can't be that. It needs to be a guy who's no older than 25. Obviously, ideally, that's through the draft. But even if they get the second overall pick this year, the first, is Shane Wright or Logan Cooley going to be that guy? I'm not sure.
No. Good players,
I'm not sure.
Not stars.
Exactly. So
got to get Marner. Got to get Marner.
Marner would change a lot for this team.
Yep.
Or a Larkin or a Scheifele, or Scheifele to a lesser extent because he's on the older side of things.
Yeah, he's 20, right?
Yeah, so he's the same age as Couturier.
Yeah,
they went 7-8.
Yeah.
So I mean, you need a big time dynamic offensive player like that to change everything.
Yeah.
But if you bring in
to me, it's Larkin or Marner.
Yeah.
I'm in the Marner Larkin order, but Marner makes more than Larkin does now.
Yeah, so you would have some cost certainty with Larkin. I think he's at 6.1.
Yeah.
And but I think Marner's the better player. Marner's arguably the best winger in the NHL.
Yeah, I agree.
Obviously Panarin and Kaprizov would have things to say about that, Ovechkin as well, but Marner's a special player, plays at both ends of the ice, good on the penalty kill, like phenomenal passer. He's just a great talent.
Yeah, and Toronto is going to need to do something different.
It's going to be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs.
Yeah, no doubt. Ant, thanks for doing this, man. Read Ant stuff at thefourthperiod.com. Always great stuff up there. I'm reading you every time you post. And what's the Twitter handle? At Ant DiMarco?
At A DiMarco 25.
A DiMarco 25. So thanks for doing this, man. Good luck with the move. Glad you're feeling better from the COVID and everything else.
Thanks a lot, man. Take it easy.
There he is. Anthony DiMarco on the newest edition of Stick to Hockey. Let's put this one there. There we go. And it's time to get out your betPARX app or a piece of paper so you can put this stuff on your betPARX app in just a little bit, because we got the man. He went 4-1 on the Stick to Hockey live show last week. It is time for a brand new edition brought to you by betPARX of Tone's Take. And there he is. What's going on, Tone?
What's up, Jason? How you doing? Hope you enjoyed your birthday.
Good. Thank you. I'm old, dude. I'm old now, man. I'm 50. What was the over/under? Did I nail the over? Oh man, it's nuts. Like, I can't believe that I'm 50. It feels weird. Like, I don't feel any different or anything like that, but it just
Right.
feels weird that I'm 50.
Feel different than 40?
It doesn't feel any different,
No?
but like mentally it's different, I guess. Like
Yeah.
people are like, "Oh, you're in your 50s now. You're going to be tired all the time." I'm like, "I've been tired for 20 years."
You're not in your 50s yet. I guess you got one more year to get into the 50s, I guess, right?
Yeah, technically I guess you're right. Yeah. I guess that, but technically I'm also in my 51st year of life.
Yeah,
Because you go from zero, you're not even one until you're 365 days old. So,
Yeah.
Tone, you had a good week last week. 4-1 last week. Riding that heater plus 4.85 units. And the last 2 weeks on the Stick to Hockey podcast, let's double it up and go to 8-2, 8.35 units. You're feeling it right now.
Yeah. Hopefully we can keep that going.
All right. So here, I told them get out the betPARX app, open it up, or just write these down and then open up the app in a little bit, the brand new betPARX app, which we love. Because here's the first play in Tone's Takes for this Friday. How about play number 1? You like the Rangers giving up a goal, but shaving down some of the juice here.
Yeah, I'm going to go -1. It's -109. I think the Rangers are going to win this game. Islanders just beat them in New York on St. Patty's Day. Islanders are in their 5th game in 7 nights. They have goaltending injuries. Corey Schneider might actually get the start tonight back in the NHL.
Wow.
So I get to go with either him or Varlamov because Sorokin's hurt. Shesterkin is confirmed at home for the Rangers. He's 17-3 at home and 2 at home. 1.86 goals against, 0.943 save percentage. So dude's pretty much unbeatable at home. These games might start to get a little tighter as we go here. So instead of doing a regulation bet, just going to, play it safe a little bit with the -1, which I like to do.
Yeah, that 943 save percentage at home. That's not good. That is gaudy. That is impressive. Play number 2. Let's go to let's go to the Motor City. Ottawa is visiting Detroit in this game, but you like a total in this one.
Yeah, I like the over 6. You see a lot with these teams that are not in playoff contention. When they get together, they just play loose hockey. There's been 4 games this week where it's a similar situation. Teams are not close to the playoffs. All 4 of those games have gone over. Ottawa allows 3.44 goals on the road. Detroit allows 3.54 goals at home. The last 3 NHL teams to have scored 10 goals in a game all have been against the Detroit Red Wings. Think about that.
Even that 11 spot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Holy cow. How does
Yeah,
that ever happen,
so.
Right? That's amazing. Like, you just want to see your team down the stretch kind of play decent and be able to play some tight games, and giving up goals at that rate is just alarming. Let's go to a player prop here for play number 3. You like Vrana at over 2.5 shots on goal.
Yeah, it's +115. He's on Detroit, for those who don't know. He's only played 11 games this year due to injury.
He's been good, though, since he came back.
He has, yeah. I think he scored goals in 4 of his last 5.
Yeah.
He's hit this in 7 of the 11 games and 4 of the last 5 at home. Ottawa gives up a lot of shots on the road, 33.2. Vrana plays center on that top power play unit, and Ottawa takes a bunch of penalties on the road, 6 most penalties on the road. So I think he's going to get a decent amount of looks here. As we talked about before, guys you score goals, they're going to keep shooting. So got to get a plus money play in here. So I'm going to go with this one tonight.
Yeah, I like the thinking here too, because I think part of it, Tone, is that since Vrana hasn't played a lot this year, there's not a lot of data from Vegas to set a proper line.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Definitely. Good point.
That's what you find. You find where Vegas is not necessarily the most educated on a certain play. You find the flawed line and you slam it with the betPARX app.
Definitely find it in the NHL because there's a lot they don't pay attention to. Especially with these
totally
props,
agree.
Especially these props out the past couple of years.
Yep. All right. So Tone is 8-2 in his last 2 stick to hockey appearances. He's looking to build on it with 3 plays. He's got the Rangers -1 at -109 with Shesterkin at home playing great. He's got Ottawa and Detroit playing the over 6 at -120. And the third play is Jacob Vrana over 2.5 shots on goal, getting plus money here as well at +115. Great stuff, Tone. We'll talk to you next week, man. Cash him.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Have a good weekend.
All right, there he is. Tone's Takes on another edition of betPARX presents Stick to Hockey Live. All right, let me give you the 3 again. Okay, so get out your pen. I mean, Tone is riding it right now. Plus 8.35 units on his last 2 weeks of Stick to Hockey plays. So he's got 10 total plays in there. This week we've got 3. We got the Rangers -1 at -109, Ottawa and Detroit the over 6 at -120, and Verona over 2.5 shots on goal at +115. Grab the betPARX app. I'll open it again. Here we go. It's probably still in my. There it is, right there. Boom. I got to log in. So I'm going to log in with my face ID, and it's going to check my location, and then you get your plays in. Check it out. This app is fantastic. It is sensational. See at the bottom here, you can go my account, then go sports, boom, and then you can pick what you want to play. All the different ways to bet, sports book. I always click on this little thing, this little icon here, the round one, which says is a puck, and it's got all the games there for you. And get this off here. All the games, all the different ways to bet. So you click on a game. Let's go to the Montreal Canadiens Tampa Bay Lightning game, rematch of the Cup final. Here's all the different. There's all kinds of different ways to bet. Events and open bet, everything, you name it. It's all there on the betPARX Presents Stick to Hockey Live app. I've changed the name of it too. No, but it is the betPARX app. So pick it up, check it out. If you're using the old app, the new app is fantastic. So make sure you download it. And it's a casino and sports book. It is now live, and you can take it from me. The betPARX app is awesome. It's everything you've wanted in a mobile casino and a sports betting app, and it's right in your pocket. And it's easy to sign up if you don't have an account yet. Fun to use, easy to use, and faster to win than ever before. So again, check it out. It's the betPARX app, and all betPARX users get the choice of either a $20 casino bonus right now or a $20 free sports bet. So you can go on now, just grab the app, open up an account, and you'll get that free $20 sports bet for tonight. Use it on one of those 3 games that we just mentioned, one of those plays that Tone, you just click a little box and boom, that'll get you your free $20 free sports bet. That'll be a way to dip your toe in and get it familiarized with the betPARX app. So check it out. You got to be in Pennsylvania or New Jersey. Download the app today. Do need to be over 21. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, what do we have this weekend for the Flyers? We have Saturday back home after the 5-game road trip against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Saturday night, we'll see that 50-goal scorer, Austin Matthews, who netted his 50th into an empty net last night. And then we have the Rangers on Sunday. I may have to text Valaquette and see if Valley can jump on. Steve Valaquette does the games for MSG, former Ranger goaltender and the proprietor of ClearSight Analytics. And then the Flyers will have a home-and-home next week with Columbus on Tuesday and Thursday. Tuesday's in Philadelphia, Thursday in Columbus. It's the final month of the NHL regular season. Flyers have 15 games left, all in the month of April, and they'll wrap it up April 29th against the Ottawa Senators. So a lot of hockey on the way, a lot of things to see. We'll see the debut, I'm assuming, of Ronnie Attard. We saw it of Noah Cates. He'll be back in the lineup as well, and quite possibly Keith Yandel out of the lineup for the Flyers tomorrow when they return home to take on the Leafs. So everybody, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you are one of our podcast on-demand listeners, make sure you subscribe. Leave us a rating and review. If you're a streamer, we appreciate that as well. And if you are interested in doing a podcast, check out my friends at Wildfire Podcasting. Hit up Jim Grasso. Your first episode will be free of charge. Just Google Wildfire Podcasting and get all the info there. They do a great job, and we appreciate everything they do for this podcast and others that I'm involved in as well. And, of course, thanks to everybody at betPARX. Make sure you download the app and get in on all the action and the free bets and plus Tone's takes as well. So we'll talk to you next week on a brand new edition of betPARX Presents Stick to Hockey Live. Have a great weekend, everybody.